hire the armies of lawyers and accountants and lobbyists. So I think simplification really does democratize the tax code in that regard. But I also believe that a rising tide lifts all ships. And I believe that tax reform in general is going to create tremendous GDP growth, which will really unleash the full potential of this economy in the same way you're starting to see through the regulatory actions the administration has taken. That, coupled with tax reform, will fully unleash the power of America to realize its economic potential. So I think it's very, very exciting. It's definitely geared towards everyone, but the focus and the stated focus consistently over and over again of this administration is a priority on middle-income American families.
Our goal is to increase the amount of cash being held by the middle-income family. For instance, the anticipation is if we return the expatriation of our funds, along with the tax brackets and tax reduction, that each family could realize about a $4,000 return additional in their income. And what family could not afford? You know, sometimes we get really involved in Washington, D.C., but I've been with families that have to negotiate. When do they get the braces? If they're going to send their children to summer camp, because do they send two or do they send the one? And how can they afford? And that's only to keep them out of trouble while mom and dad work. And so those are the real family issues that this tax reform is going to address.
And everyone wants that money to come back. So this has been an issue talked about on both sides of the aisle for ages, and nothing's ever happened. So in the meantime, $2.5 trillion at least sits overseas. It could be brought back into this country and per CEA have the $4,000 benefit for American households. That is enormous, and especially put in the context of the fact that savings are so low and that in roughly half of American families can't come up with $400 in the event of an emergency over the course of a month without borrowing something or borrowing the money or selling something. So savings are not where they need to be in this country to provide stability. There's tremendous financial fragility because of that. And it's another really important and compelling reason why we need tax reform, and we need to enable Americans to take home more of their hard-earned paycheck.
Thank you.
And Ivanka, you have mentioned so aptly that the tax reform proposal isn't just a tax reform proposal, it's a jobs proposal. It's a jobs bill. And I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit more about why you emphasize that so eloquently with this tax bill.
Well, I think if you level the playing field, nobody's going to beat the spirit of the American worker. No country is more innovative. We've seen that consistently through time, but we are not playing on a level playing field. Our corporate rates are dramatically higher than our prime competitors in the developed world. So when you think about the decision matrix of a large organization, they're going to go to an environment that's conducive for maximum growth. And we want that environment to be right here. We want people to be choosing America, not just because it's their preferred place to locate, but also because it makes sense for them to locate there, and it will create sustainable growth, sustainable opportunity. So I do think that, it can't just be about cutting taxes. You're doing that because you want to fuel and incentivize growth, which will lead to the long-term benefit of all.
Thank you both so very much, and we have a new question coming up from Terry from Plymouth Meeting. Terry, can you raise your hand? Terry from Plymouth Meeting? Perhaps a little camera
Hi,
shy?
Terry. Don't be shy.
Well, I'm going to present Terry's question. It's a good one. What's your plan for hardworking entrepreneurs like yourselves, I might add? So, Jovita, Ivanka, if you could share that.
Our plan, as I mentioned earlier, is to recognize not only the expense of the most difficult tax process that they have, the filing. I just mentioned $15 billion to process and comply with our tax reform. So that's going to be a savings to our small business community. Secondly, the marginal tax, where it's going to be capped at 25%. That's big. You can plan. You know, I know of a lot of small businesses because I deal with U.S. Chamber, the Hispanic U.S. Chamber, and the fact that they had to convert full-time employees to part-time employees, because then there's a benefit cost there, there's a retirement a contribution piece there. Now they can innovate further, they can expand. We also have small businesses that want to go international. But when you have the expense of employee, expense of customs, expense of freight, and you just couple that with the expense of just complying with taxes, that stifles growth. And tax reform is about fueling our economy. It's not about a Kindle or a transition. We really want to see it take off. It has already, because we've realized already an unemployment of about 4.2 approximately, and then also with a GDP of 3% coming from a staggering 1%. I've seen that. If you're stockholders, you know that even the earnings are not that good. So, I may have started out with blue collar, but I can appreciate for those that have saved so diligent, so long, made the sacrifices to now have a little return on those investments.
Thank you, Jovita. Ivanka, our hardworking entrepreneurs.
Well, I think that was very elegantly put. So it's the combination of what we're doing through tax reform and what we're doing through deregulation, and also how we're supporting the working family, because entrepreneurs are parents too, yes, and need policies and need relief in light of the dramatically increasing cost of raising children. And I will add, taking care of adult dependents. So one of the things that we've yes added to this tax plan is a recognition of the fact that so many of us, particularly women, are leaving the workforce and providing care for adult relatives who are sick. And the cost of that, financially and also emotionally, is enormous. So it's recognizing the challenges unique of being a young parent, but also being a person taking care of an aging parent or relative, I think is very important. But just generally, the lifeblood of this country has always been our small businesses. Our entrepreneurs are second to none. So we're incredibly focused on pragmatic, smart policies to encourage them to be bold, to encourage them to invest in creating the next generation of great business and supporting their families and contributing to their communities. And we believe that this tax plan does exactly that. I think writing off that capital investment is very important, because we see it in big and small companies. People aren't making significant capital investments because they don't have the ability to do so. We see it in our manufacturing facilities, where the equipment is long past its useful life and hasn't been upgraded, which is making in turn those factories non-competitive with factories around the world. So I think enabling people that one-time write-off will also really jumpstart the reinvestment into their business and the reinvestment with confidence into their business.
You touched on something that is very moving to me, and I want to share this publicly, Ivanka, and I'm going to put you on the spot. The fact that she is not only graceful and very intelligent and very engaged with you, she understands, she can relate. You see, I have a mother that's 91 years old. She's bedridden, and she has 24/7 nursing. So we all make a compromise, and we all need to preserve the integrity of our savings in order to deal with those situations that as a child, and my culture, Hispanic, we're very familiar, so we take in the neighbors, we take in the grandmothers, or whether the tios, the uncle, whatever. We have them all. And the fact that there's a $500 credit for non-dependent children, that really helps the Hispanic family because we take them all in, all the cousins and whatnot. So thank you, Ivanka, for being sensitive and understanding the role of a family. Thank you.
Well said, Jovita, and thank you. And apropos of the initiatives, Ivanka, that you take your gifts and talents and time to promote so brilliantly, STEM education, workforce preparation, apprenticeships. Can you share with us a bit about that, because it goes right into job creation with tax reform?
Well, this is something I'm very passionate about. In the earliest days of transition, the administration, I'd constantly hear from business leaders, big and small, that they were having trouble filling vacant positions because there was a misalignment between the skills they needed and the education that our students were receiving in the classroom. And this is something that we have to recognize and we have to bridge. There are 6 million vacant jobs available in our economy right now. So we need, I think, our foremost obligation to our students is to enable them to enter the workforce prepared and with a skill set that will enable them to succeed in the modern economy. So we have prioritized that. The President issued a presidential memorandum instructing the Department of Education to prioritize STEM with a focus on computer science. It's critical as we think about this fourth industrial revolution that we're entering that we don't leave women and minorities behind, because we have been traditionally very underrepresented in these fields. And when you think about the work of the future, increasingly there will be a focus on technical skills, on engineering. So encouraging our girls to get early exposure to computer science and to technology and to engineering is very foundationally important and a priority for the administration. But then also think about worker retraining. As an administration, we're very focused on apprenticeship programs, on returnships, on retraining. So what do you do when you have a segment geographically of the population that you anticipate that their jobs may be lost for one reason or another? How do you retrain that workforce? And what are the best programs out there to do that tactically to ensure that everyone has an opportunity to succeed in this economy? So there are different questions, starting with our youngest student to our older worker who wants to continue to work or has to continue to work to provide for their family. And how do we think about education and skills training to both fill those vacant jobs that we want to fill, but also to make sure that everyone's able to provide for themselves and their families?
Well, it's an interesting question because the Treasurer is just as focused as the President in the area of STEM. You see, the U.S. the Secretary of Treasury, Steve Mnuchin, is the chair of the Federal Financial and Literacy Education Commission, and it consists of 20 agencies. And currently we are reforming that commission, modernizing it to address the needs of improving in the STEM student enrollment. You know, one of the things that I said to the Secretary when I was first interviewed for this position was, you know, what do you envision as a treasurer? And I said, I'd like to double the STEM student enrollment. I'm not supposed to give numbers because then you're going to hold me to it, but, and then increase by a significant number the number of savings accounts in our underserved market. And so we're working with 20 agencies to address the increase in STEM student enrollment. A focus on women, but as well as trade, because finance and science and IT is really the driver. The driver in Treasury, I work with such brilliant people at Treasury, and CPAs and tax attorneys, and I'm just amazed and so impressed. But that's generational. So we have about 30 to 40% of our federal employees who could retire today. And so we need to replace those very brilliant individuals that we've had the privilege of serving this country 10, 15, 20, 30 years, 40 years. And so it's a real focus and real importance to focus in on the STEM student enrollment and how can we facilitate that in all of our schools, including the inner city schools.
And just as one follow-up to that, what you'll see both through tax reform and through the administration's actions and executive actions is really prioritizing workforce development, whether it's in the private sector and companies investing in their workforce, making sure that the next generation coming up is able to fill the jobs of those retiring. But also as an administration thinking about two path A's. For every person, college is not the right option, and we have to stop conditioning our students that that is the only viable path when there are many jobs available that require just high school or some level of post-secondary education. So how are we thinking about workforce development starting in our high schools and continuing in our technical schools and vocational schools that have been largely left behind? I'm glad that you all are passionate about it because it's very important, especially as so many kids are now graduating from university loaded up with student debt and without great job prospects that mirror the financial burden that and justify the financial burden that they've taken on. So I think one of the things you'll start to see, and just last week, the apprenticeship task force we're putting together at the Department of Labor was announced, and we're thinking about industry-wide credentialing and the intersection of technical education and community college with the jobs that are available in different sectors of the industry and how we can create certifications and credentials to enable that knowledge to be portable. You see it a bit in the construction industry, but we could have that in so many other industries where somebody's experience is recognized as they move from state to state and employer to employer across certain industries. So we're very, very focused on apprenticeship and that to fuel economic growth as well.
Jovita, Ivanka, thank you for wonderful, wonderful, inspiring thoughts about these crucial issues. And we have, in our remaining about 12 and a half minutes, it's flying by, we have two more questions. One from Kathy Page from Bucks County. Kathy? Hi, Kathy. Thank you for being with us. And here is Kathy's question. And it's a good one. What are the chances the tax plan will pass? Would you care to give an estimate?
We're here to make sure it does.
That's the right answer.
That's it. I think it's fair to say we're all here to make sure it does.
Exactly.
So thank you, Kathy, for that little spur to all of us. It has to pass, and it deserves to. And we have, this is a great one, Morgan and Emily from Richboro. Morgan and Emily.
All
Hey,
right.
stand up, Morgan and Emily. Yay.
Okay. The generation we
From
were
right
speaking
here
of.
in Richboro, Morgan and Emily, we're going to ask your question. And Morgan and Emily have written, we attend 7th grade across the street. Please tell us one key item you're working hard on that we can take back to our class when we go back to school tomorrow. We're currently starting a unit on national politics. Thank you.
Wow. That's so cool. Well, thank you for being here. So now, does this count as cutting class? Are we going to get in trouble? Well, I actually talked about something a little bit earlier that I'm very passionate about, which is girls in STEM and getting involved and getting excited about the opportunity in STEM jobs early. And coding is cool. It's foundational. to every industry. So, a lot of times, and we tend to think about coding as a technology skill, but the reality is there is not an industry on earth that isn't being disrupted by technology. So I think as we think about the future, having those foundational skills that will enable us to succeed, whether we go into tech in a sort of traditional sense, or whether we go into healthcare or education or manufacturing or anywhere in between. So get your girlfriends to learn how to code with you. It's something that we've been promoting. And then I think just use your voice. We need more women and girls represented in politics. And being here today is hopefully a signal that you have some interest in doing just that. So that is a very exciting thing, and I would fully encourage you to do that, as we need more women at the table. Thanks.
Ivanka?
Since you're going to get engaged in politics, and this is a bipartisan area of focus that I have, because it is looking at all the regulatory environment that we have for community banks and banks in general that provide funds for the underserved community, the unbanked, the underbanked, and rural. So that is really a very needy reform, and we have about 10 people looking into it, and we've already held about, I'd say, 25 meetings with bankers and whatnot. So it's a real important one. It's called Community Reinvestment Act. Okay, thank you.
Well, thanks. Ivanka, please, go ahead, please.
Oh, no. I just said thank you.
Oh, yeah. Well, this has been a marvelous opportunity, I think, for all of us to hear from two of our great leaders working. Yes, please. Thank you. And I want to thank you on behalf of our hosts today, of Presidential Advisor Ivanka Trump, U.S. Treasurer Jovita Carranza, for your caring and your effort and your hard work, because the way we will achieve this together is through your dedication and through what you share with your neighbors and your friends and your loved ones across the country. And I'm going to ask Ivanka and Jovita if you might have a couple of closing thoughts for us in these last few minutes. I know we've talked about an awful lot of things, but if we could wrap it up together.
Well, first of all, I would like to thank you.
Oh,
wonderful moderator today, so thank you, Congresswoman. We're very appreciative, and to everyone in the audience, thank you for taking the time. We know that time is incredibly valuable, so it means a lot that each of you took the time to be here today and join in this discussion. I would urge you to remind everyone in Congress about how vitally important this is, and how the American people, Republican and Democrat, want tax relief and want tax reform, because this is an important issue to the vast majority of this country, and our legislators need to be reminded of that. So we are committed, we are focused, we are doing everything that we can, and lend your voices to the discussion and help us remind everyone in Washington, D.C. of just how critical this is to the future competitiveness of this country and to everyone in the room and across the country individually. Thanks.
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. This is a real special moment for me, and also thank you very much. You've asked some very excellent questions and recognized the audience who really, through your support, is the reason why we're here. I speak to large audiences no differently than you, Ivanka, but your reception and attention was really spectacular. It drew some details that probably I don't have on my cheat sheet notes, because tax reform is so critical to our nation's strength, competition, and wealth, and national security. We cannot forget that component. And I'd like to hear from you, eventually through notes, how we can improve these forums because we want to bring the right message. We need your support, and we need you to resonate this message through your churches, through your schools, and through your business colleagues, because it's really that important. Thank you.
Can I just say, is there anything more reinvigorating than getting out of Washington?
Exactly.
So thank you for hosting us. Thank you, Nan.
Thank you.
I'll talk to you. Let's see each other afterwards.
Let's do it. Let's set up something.
Gentlemen here, and then we have a seat for you right there. I was told this was going to be season.
What? That's the juice you got. You got what? What's up? They just announced it? Yeah. That fast? Oh.
No more room here.
Is there any room on the other side?
I can't see on the far end.
Check. 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 1 2. Check.
I don't see the light over here.
I have no idea what's happening here.
Yeah, it's not going out.
There's people just standing up there. Just got priority. Yo. I don't think that's who that is.
Yeah, this.
No.
Is that him, huh?
Yeah. You go up this light.
Are you going on your line at all?
Light there.
Yeah.
It's right on.
Oh.
So you want to be a spot.
I see. I got it. I cannot talk to you.
Man, how are you? I'm doing great. Definitely right on. Cool. If you my direction.
I'll know what's happening.
probably an old picture.
No, that guy is younger than this picture, and it's probably an old picture. So the real, sorry, that's not that. I don't think that's it. That guy is younger than the man in this picture, and that's probably an old picture. I don't think that's it. Right? David is very similar to I forget who he is.
But he is like a senator.
I think he's a congressman. They couldn't pay, I'll just send one person to take pictures and then like text it to each other? Not how it works.
Trying to figure out somebody.
I'm just trying to make the common call the owners of the news agency to try how to make this more efficient. Yeah, make this more efficient. No. This is democracy at work. This is competition in action. Everybody's got to have their own power.
Really? Yeah.
That's what it said. It's all about.
No, I don't.
I'm sure there's.
Thank you. You're a star.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, accompanied by Medal of Honor recipient Captain Gary M. Rose, United States Army, retired.
We recall the words of sacred scripture, "No one has greater love than this, than to lay down one's life for one's friends." Let us pray. Almighty God, source of our faith, our hope, and our love, be present with us here now, on this so important occasion for our nation, as we recognize the extraordinary selfless service of Captain Mike Rose. His heroic acts of sacrifice reveal to us the true dignity of each and every one of us, of all our brothers and sisters. May these few moments here today, and this example of Captain Rose's noble service, trace for us, for the world, the way of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. May his heroic acts stir within us all the sacred desire to serve our nation, to serve with honor, and to serve with these selfless acts that lead to peace. Amen.
Please, thank you. Thank you very much, Chaplain Hurley, Vice President Pence, Secretary Shulkin, members of Congress, members of the Armed Forces, and distinguished guests. Please join me in welcoming Captain Gary Michael Rose to the White House. For many years, the story of Mike's heroism has gone untold. But today we gather to tell the world of his valor and proudly present him with our nation's highest military honor. Joining Mike today is his wife, Margaret, their 3 children, Sarah, Claire, and Michael, and their 2 grandchildren, Caitlin and Christian. Caitlin and Christian, I want you to know that the medal that we will present today will forever enshrine your grandfather, and he is a good man. We just spoke to him for a long time, and you are great, great young people. But this will enshrine him into the history of our nation. We're also grateful to be joined by 9 previous Congressional Medal of Honor recipients. Their courage, character, and conviction is beyond measure. Please stand. We are honored to be in their presence. This afternoon, I want to take a few moments to share with you the incredible story of Mike's heroic deeds. Raised in Watertown, New York, Mike's father was a metal worker and a World War II veteran. He taught his son that we live in the greatest country in the world and that we must love it, cherish it, and always defend it. Mike took that very much to heart. After his first year in college, he enlisted in the Army, and by the time he was 22, Mike was a medic for the 5th Special Forces Group in the Vietnam War. On September 11th, 1970, Mike was called on his second combat mission. He was the only medic for 136 men who embarked on one of the group's biggest missions of the war, Operation Tailwind. Their goal was to prevent the North Vietnamese from funneling weapons along the Ho Chi Minh Trail to use against our American troops. Helicopters dropped the unit into Laos. Before they even touched the ground, enemy fire struck 3 men. Once they landed in the clearing, they rushed to the jungle for much-needed cover. Soon another man was shot outside their defensive perimeter. Mike immediately rushed to his injured comrade, firing at the enemy as he ran. In the middle of the clearing, under the machine gun fire, Mike treated the wounded soldier. He shielded the man with his own body and carried him back to safety. But this was just the beginning of Mike's harrowing 4-day mission. Mike and his unit slashed through the dense jungle, dodged bullets, dodged explosives, dodged everything that you can dodge because they threw it all at him, and continuously returned fire as they moved deeper and deeper and deeper into enemy territory. Throughout the engagement, Mike rescued those in distress without any thought for his own safety. I will tell you, the people with him could not believe what they were witnessing. He crawled from one soldier to the next, offering words of encouragement as he tended to their wounds. On the second day, one of the Allied soldiers was shot outside their company perimeter. Again, Mike raced to the side of the soldier, exposing himself to constant fire. As bullets flew in every direction, Mike fired at the enemy with one arm while dragging the injured soldier back to the perimeter with the other. Soon after they returned to their unit, a rocket-propelled grenade exploded nearby and shot smoldering metal into Mike's back and into his leg. He was seriously, seriously wounded. The shrapnel left a gaping hole in Mike's foot. For the next 48 excruciating hours, he used a branch as a crutch and went on rescuing the wounded. Mike did not stop to eat, to sleep, or even to care for his own serious injury as he saved the lives of his fellow soldiers. On the second and final night of the mission, the enemy surrounded the company. All night long, Mike treated the wound and dug trenches to protect them from blazing rockets and grenades. After 4 days of constant engagement with the enemy, and after successfully destroying an enemy base camp, Mike's unit prepared to evacuate. When the helicopters arrived, Mike fought back the enemy as his fellow soldiers boarded the aircraft. He boarded the last chopper, limping up to the craft, while still warding off the enemy forces that were fast approaching. As Mike puts it, if you don't believe in God, then you should have been with us that day. And I can tell you, it'll make a believer out of you, because we should not ever have survived. Mike, today we have a room full of people and a nation who thank God that you lived. Mike's story doesn't end there. Soon after the helicopter lifted off the ground, the chopper was hit by enemy fire. Mike, this is serious stuff. This was not a good 4 days. The bullets tragically struck a young Marine gunner in the throat. Again, Mike rushed to help as he wrapped a cloth around the Marine's neck The engine of the helicopter failed, and the aircraft crashed less than a mile from where it had taken off. Mike was thrown off the aircraft before it hit the ground, but he raced back to the crash site and pulled one man after another out of the smoking and smoldering helicopter as it spewed jet fuel from its ruptured tanks. Finally, another helicopter rescued them, and by the time they reached the base, Mike was covered in blood. He refused treatment until all of his men had been cared for first. In every action during those 4 days, Mike valiantly fought for the life of his comrades, even if it meant the end of his own life. Mike, you will, I have to say, your will to endure, your love for your fellow soldier, your devotion to your country inspires us all. I have to tell you, that is something. Nations are formed out of the strength and patriotism that lives in the hearts of our great heroes. Mike never knew for certain whether or not that Marine gunner who was shot on the helicopter survived until earlier this year when Mike learned that the Marine had endured a painful and difficult recovery, but that he had made it and lived a long and very full life before passing away in 2012. As Mike said, that in itself made it all worth it. That Marine was one of many men Mike saved. Throughout those 4 days, Mike treated an astounding 60 to 70 men. Their company disrupted the enemy's continual resupply of weapons, saving countless of additional American lives. Today, we are joined by many of Mike's brothers in arms who fought alongside him in Operation Tailwind, along with brave airmen and Marines who provided critical support throughout the mission. As Mike put it, if it wasn't for those air crews, all of us would still be in Laos. Among those here today are 10 members of Mike's unit. Please stand up as I call your name. Sergeant Major Morris Adair, Sergeant Don Boudreau, First Sergeant Bernie Bright, Captain Pete Landon, Sergeant Jim Lucas, Lieutenant Colonel Gene McCarley, First Sergeant Denver Minton, Sergeant Keith Planchett, Specialist 5 Craig Schmidt, and Staff Sergeant Dave Young. Thank you very much. Thank you. To Mike and all of the service members who fought in the battle, you've earned the eternal gratitude of the entire American nation. You faced down the evils of communism, you defended our flag, and you showed the world the unbreakable resolve of the American armed forces. Thank you, and thank you very much. After serving in Operation Tailwind, Mike went on to become an officer in the Army and served for over 20 years. Now, Mike and his wife, Margaret, stand up, Margaret. I met Margaret. Margaret's lovely. Reside in a fantastic place where I just left, Huntsville, Alabama, where he lives by a core conviction. You serve your country by fixing your block or fixing your neighborhood. Mike volunteers with the American Legion, the Knights of Columbus, and many other organizations. He volunteers at a local soup kitchen, fixes broken appliances for elderly and disabled neighbors, donates his hair for those suffering from cancer, makes lunches for children in need, and organizes community gatherings to bring people closer together. Just something we need all over the world and certainly in our country. He's a loyal friend to his fellow service members, many of whom are in addition here today. And every Wednesday, Caitlin and Christian come over for homework night with Grandpa and Grandma. I think Caitlin and Christian will agree, and I just met them. You have to stand up. Come on, Christian. Come on, Caitlin. But I think that Caitlin and Christian will agree this field trip is their best homework assignment yet, right? What do you think, Christian? Yes? He said yes. I'm told that recently Christian asked his grandfather, what exactly is the Congressional Medal of Honor? That is a wonderful question, Christian. It's the award given to America's bravest heroes who earn our freedom with their sacrifice. Those who receive the Medal of Honor went above and beyond the call of duty to protect their fellow service members and defend our nation. Caitlin and Christian, you are about to witness your grandpa receive our nation's highest military honor. And America is about to witness Captain Gary Michael Rose, recognized as the true American hero that he is, a patriot who never gives up, never gives in, and always stands strong for God, for family, and for country. Mike, we honor you, we thank you, we salute you, and with hearts full of admiration and pride, we present you with the Congressional Medal of Honor. And now I would like the military aide to come forward and read the citation. Thank you very much. Thank you.
The President of the United States of America, authorized by Act of Congress, March 3, 1863, has awarded in the name of Congress the Medal of Honor to Sergeant Gary M. Rose, United States Army, for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty. Sergeant Gary M. Rose distinguished himself by acts of gallantry and intrepidity while serving as a Special Forces medic with a company-sized exploitation force, Special Operations Augmentation, Command and Control Central, 5th Special Forces Group Airborne, 1st Special Forces, Republic of Vietnam. Between 11 and 14 September 1970, Sergeant Rose's company was continuously engaged by a well-armed and numerically superior hostile force deep in enemy-controlled territory. Enemy B-40 rockets and mortar rounds rained down while the adversary sprayed the area with small arms and machine gun fire, wounding many and forcing everyone to seek cover. Sergeant Rose, braving the hail of bullets, sprinted 50 meters to a wounded soldier's side. He then used his own body to protect the casualty from further injury while treating his wounds. After stabilizing the casualty, Sergeant Rose carried him through the bullet-ridden combat zone to protective cover. As the enemy accelerated the attack, Sergeant Rose continuously exposed himself to intense fire as he fearlessly moved from casualty to casualty, administering life-saving aid. A B-40 rocket impacted just meters from Sergeant Rose, knocking him from his feet and injuring his head, hand, and foot. Ignoring his wounds, Sergeant Rose struggled to his feet and continued to render aid to the other injured soldiers. During an attempted medevac, Sergeant Rose again exposed himself to enemy fire as he attempted to hoist wounded personnel up to the hovering helicopter, which was unable to land due to unsuitable terrain. The medevac mission was aborted due to intense enemy fire, and the helicopter crashed a few miles away due to the enemy fire sustained during the attempted extraction. Over the next 2 days, Sergeant Rose continued to expose himself to enemy fire in order to treat the wounded, estimated to be half of the company's personnel. On September 14th, during the company's eventual helicopter extraction, the enemy launched a full-scale offensive. Sergeant Rose, after loading wounded personnel on the first set of extraction helicopters, returned to the outer perimeter under enemy fire, carrying friendly casualties and moving wounded personnel to more secure positions until they could be evacuated. He then returned to the perimeter to help repel the enemy until the final extraction helicopter had arrived. As the final helicopter was loaded, the enemy began to overrun the company's position, and the helicopter's Marine door gunner was shot in the neck. Sergeant Rose instantly administered critical medical treatment on board the helicopter, saving the Marine's life. The helicopter carrying Sergeant Rose crashed several hundred meters from the extraction point, further injuring Sergeant Rose and the personnel on board. Despite his numerous wounds from the past 3 days, Sergeant Rose continued to pull and carry unconscious and wounded personnel out of the burning wreckage and continued to administer aid to the wounded until another extraction helicopter arrived. Sergeant Rose's extraordinary heroism and selflessness above and beyond the call of duty were critical to saving numerous lives over that 4-day time period. His actions are in keeping with the highest traditions of military service and reflect great credit upon himself, the 1st Special Forces, and the United States Army.
Eternal God, we ask for your blessings, the blessings of this day, to remain with us as we go forward. May we go forth in peace, empowered to serve with greater courage, and strengthened to overcome the challenges of our service, of our call, given to serve all in need. And we ask all this in your holy name. Amen.
All right, folks, thank you very much for joining us and choosing us as your stream of choice. Today, there are some news, but it's my birthday and my wife doesn't want me to work today, so we are going to continue operations of Golden State Times tomorrow, and we have some very, very exciting news coming from both of us, me and my wife. We're going to be doing a live stream at some point in the next few weeks regarding some very, very life-changing situation for both of us. So we're going to be doing that soon. But yeah, my wife doesn't want me to work today, so I'm so sorry, guys. She only allowed me to do these 2 streams. So, but if there's any like breaking news that I have to cover no matter what, they'll be coming later on today if there is any. If not, we're just going to start full operation tomorrow. So yeah, I hope that you guys understand, and I really don't want to piss off my wife. So I'm going to get out of here. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys soon. If you're new to the community, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. And if you want to sign up to our newsletter, go to goldenstatetimes.com or the link in the description below. So see you guys tomorrow, fresh and early, for more live streams, videos, all that stuff. And whatever I didn't cover today, I'll hopefully cover it tomorrow along with tomorrow's breaking news and upcoming streams. So thank you very much. Peace.